Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the CURT Class 2 trailer hitch receiver on a 2022 Chevrolet Malibu. Now this is what your hitch is going to look like when it's installed, and you can see it is slightly visible from a lower angle, but as you're standing up or if you're in a car behind it, all you really see is the receiver opening. And this one is going to be 1.25 inches, so you're going to be a little bit limited as far as selection of bike racks, cargo carriers, and ball mounts, but there's still plenty of them available to choose from. Now, when you are putting your accessories in place, they're going to be held in by a 1/2 inch pin and clip, and it does not come with the hitch. A lot of your accessories will come with a pin and clip, but if you want to pick up an extra or a locking version, that way you can lock your accessories in. We have plenty of options available here at eTrailer. Now, if you plan on towing, you're going to have a plate style safety chain loops, and that's going to allow you to get your standard S style hooks in there. Even a larger clevis style will be able to attach to it. Now, speaking of towing, this is obviously not something you would be towing a large trailer with, but if you have a smaller utility trailer or some wave runner, something along those lines, it actually has a decent capacity, coming in at a gross trailer weight rating of 3,500 pounds. And that's going to be the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded up. Now, your tongue weight rating is going to be the downward pressure that's put on the hitch receiver here. So if you have a bike rack or cargo carrier, something suspended from your hitch, that's going to come in at 350 pounds. So not too bad. You could still probably load up a nice heavy duty bike rack with some e-bikes on here. Just make sure you check the weights on those, and also check your owner's manual before towing to see what the vehicle is capable of, and then you're going to want to compare that with the numbers of the hitch and take the lower of the two numbers. Now, it does sit pretty far recessed on the car itself, so from the center of the hitch pin hole to the furthest point of the rear fascia, we're looking at about 6 inches. So that's something to keep in mind when choosing accessories, especially if you're looking for something that stows up in a tilt position. You're going to want to make sure that doesn't hit your rear fascia, so check those accessories before choosing them. Now, if you are getting a ball mount, you're going to want to know if you need a rise or drop. So from the top of the receiver tube opening to the ground, we're coming in right at about 12 inches. So not only for your rise and drop, but also when you have your accessories loaded up, 12 inches is a decent amount, but as you go up an incline, those suspended accessories can actually hit the ground. So keep that in mind while driving. Now, as far as installation goes, it's not crazy bad, but you are going to be taking your exhaust off. So you need to make sure that you're able to get your vehicle up high enough to get that whole exhaust removed. And that's honestly the hardest part, because after that, you're just going to be replacing one of the studs from the exhaust isolator brackets with factory hardware, and the rest of it just kind of bolts up. There's a little bit of trimming of the heat shield that's required. I've come up with a few tips to kind of help you guys along and make it a little bit easier than the instruction manual. So if you want to watch us get this installed, and that way you can follow along and get your hitch on, let's take this into the bay and take a look. Now, to begin our installation, we are going to be using a lift here, and this is going to be a little bit tricky if you're doing this in your garage or on your driveway, as you are probably going to need to raise the vehicle up with some jacks. Make sure you have jack stands and that you're chalking the vehicle. That way it's not going to move on you. And the reason being is we need to remove the mufflers, which we have the dual exhaust here, and they go around these decorative bezels. And unfortunately, we're going to have to get these to drop down, but the bezels are going to limit that unless we take the exhaust off. Now, if you are doing this at home, to help you out, you can pick up the Rhino ramps and back your vehicle up, and that's going to give you that clearance to be able to get underneath your vehicle. So we're going to be separating the exhaust up front. There's also an exhaust brace that we're going to need to drop out, and that way we can get our resonator to kind of clear that and move it forward, and that way we can get it out of the bezels. So we're going to need to support our exhaust. So I'm just using a cam buckle strap here, and that way it's just not falling down on the ground here. We're going to go ahead and move up here towards the middle of the car, and we're going to see that we have an exhaust flange with two 13mm nuts. So we're going to go ahead and get those removed. Now, I recommend holding on to all of your hardware somewhere that's going to keep it nice and organized. It's going to make reinstallation a lot easier. We're also going to be taking this brace down again just to give us that clearance for our resonator. These are going to be a 13mm as well. You can just leave one on here and move that over to the side for now. Now, while it's still attached to the isolators on the back, we should have just enough room to get these exhaust studs out and separate the exhaust here. So just kind of push forward until those studs drop out. Now, since the front is going to be loose and we're on a lift, I'm going to move my support strap a little bit farther forward. But if you're doing this on the ground, it shouldn't be too far of a drop. I just want to make sure this whole thing doesn't fall down. So just make sure it's supported and not falling on you as you're taking it off. Now we have this isolator here on our rear cross member. So to get this out, sometimes they can be a little bit tricky. I just put a little bit of silicone spray. You can use a soapy water solution, and that's just going to kind of help get this off. So you can pry on the top or the bottom, whichever works best for you. So I'm just going to use a pry bar here, and that should get us enough leverage to get this popped off. So with this one removed, we also have isolators on the mufflers up front here. Now there is a bracket that holds them on, but these should just slide out. So since we have that front separated, we should be able to just push our exhaust forward. And you may have to kind of work it a little bit here as it's pretty close angle-wise, so you might have to lift on the exhaust to kind of get that to pop out, and you might have an extra set of hands ready to lower this down. Now it might get a little bit tight because there's 4 of them sliding out at once, so again, put some silicone spray on there, and if you need to, you can take a dead blow hammer and just kind of lightly tap this just to get a little bit of movement to be able to get this to drop out. So with my second set of hands kind of pushing on it, I'm going to again just kind of hit this and it should drop out. So now with it loose out of here, I just kind of lowered my exhaust down in the front, and that's going to kind of give us that angle as it's hitting against our control arms. It's pretty tight here, so just kind of push a little bit, and if you need to, you can kind of push on the little shrouds here to get that to pop out. Make sure you have both sides popped out. And at this point, I have my cam buckle strap holding onto it, so I'm going to lower this down and set our exhaust aside. Now for this step, we're going to be trimming the heat shield to gain access to our frame rail. That way we can mount up the hitch. And they want you to take the heat shield off. There's going to be these speed clips, and these can be a little bit tricky. Sometimes if you put a set of needle nose pliers and twist it, once you kind of get it going, you can hand thread them off. You can also use a small screwdriver and kind of rotate them. That seems like a lot of work, especially for just cutting this out, and then they have you install it immediately. So my preferred method, I guess you could say, would be to use a Dremel. Now, yes, this is kind of resting against the frame, so what you can do is put a small wedge, just something to kind of keep this with a nice little gap so it's not resting against the metal, and that way when you cut into it, it shouldn't hit any of that frame rail. Now, just take your time. You don't have to cut deep, obviously, just enough to go through here, and then we'll get this all trimmed out. The diagram is in the instructions. I've gone ahead and just taped mine out with painter's tape. It makes it a lot easier to follow a nice clean line. So just be careful here. These can get pretty sharp, but we'll go ahead and get this taken off. And then we're going to be repeating the same step on the other side, but this, you can see, now gains us access to where we're going to drop in our hardware. Now we also have this caulk here, and this can cause our hitch to not sit nice and flush, so we may need to scrape this away. You can use a putty knife to kind of get that cut back. I use an oscillating tool and just kind of work it flat, and that should peel a lot of that back. Now, one of our mounting studs that's going to be used on the hitch is right here, and that's taking out this factory one here, which is a 15mm socket. You can actually put your ratchet in here, loosen that up, and then we're going to take the longer stud that's included with the hardware and put that in place. Now this weld nut will tighten it down. You don't need to get too crazy here, but just make sure that you have it threaded all the way down and tightened. To create our other studs, we're going to be grabbing our pull wires as well as our spacer block and our carriage bolt. Now we'll start here on the one that's on the furthest point back of the vehicle. Just feed this up towards the larger hole, catch that coiled end, and then what we'll do is take our spacer block, feed that up into the chassis, And then our carriage bolt, we'll do, just kind of coil that on there. It should pop up and then pull through. We're going to do the same thing here, as well as repeat the same steps on the other side. Now with an extra set of hands, we're going to get this lifted up and in place. Now we're going to try to get this on that stud that we created first, but we need to get our fish wires in place. So we're going to use the two holes that are on the far side of the hitch, and putting a little bend like this, once you kind of put your fish wire through, it kind of locks that in so it doesn't fall out. But we're going to use these to kind of guide us up. And then we'll be, again, just using that to kind of feed that on first. And then once we get it pushed on there, we can go ahead and align our other bolts. We're going to go ahead and get our flange nut here ready. And so what we'll do is just get one started on each side. So we'll go ahead and take our pull wire off, and then just kind of hold on to the bolt or use the hitch to kind of keep pressure on it so it doesn't go up in the frame, and then just hand tighten one on each side, and that's going to support our hitch up there for us, making it easier to get the rest of our hardware on. And once that's supported, you can go ahead, get the other flange nut on the other hardware, and the smaller flange nuts are going to go here on that stud. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of this tightened down. Now I'm going to be coming back with a torque wrench, so we don't have to get crazy here. We just want to snug it down. And our studs here on our exhaust isolator brackets are going to be a 15 millimeter, and then we'll have 11/16 on these ones here. So again, just kind of snug them all up. So now that I have them tightened down, I'm coming back with my torque wrench and setting it to the torque specifications in the instruction manual. Now, if you need a torque wrench, we have them available here at eTrailer. You can generally rent them at an auto parts store. So this will make sure that they're going to be tight enough to not loosen up over time, but also it's going to be not too tight, putting stress on the threads. With everything tightened and torqued down, and we just need to get our exhaust back up and everything, all our brackets bolted up, and then all that's left to do is start using our hitch. And that was a look at installation of the CURT Class 2 trailer hitch receiver on a 2022 Chevrolet Malibu.